What's up everyone? Welcome to Kali Plants. My name is Mark. I am a Filipino succulent grower living here in the Philippines, and it's another rainy day here at the greenhouse. You can hear the rain just pattering at the roof of this greenhouse, so it's really rainy today. And so because of that, I wanted to show you succulents that can tolerate a little bit of watering and a little bit of more frequent watering than your usual succulents. Now I wanted to share this video with you guys because I know some of my viewers here at the channel are living in tropical areas, and we all know that succulents don't like to stay wet. But I found out that these varieties, I have 18 varieties here I want to show you, they can tolerate a little bit of watering, and you can water them a little bit more frequently than your other succulents. And while I'm showing you each one of them, I'm going to be giving you some tips on how to care for them so that you will have an idea if you're wanting to buy this type of succulents. Now can you see all that plant? Oh, I moved it away from the frame, so here we go. Okay, now I think I'm gonna start with the genus that is most sensitive to watering. So this is that genus, the genus of Echeverias. Now if you know Echeverias, they are very sensitive succulents. They are summer growers, unlike our most other succulents which are winter growers. So they want to be watered more frequently during the summer. But I'm gonna warn you guys, because if it's not summer in your area, or if it's very rainy like currently here in my place, then you wouldn't want to be watering them very often, because they will lose leaves if you water them if they are dormant. So make sure that they are actively growing, maybe today in your area, because we're currently in the summer season, so you would want to water them more frequently than your other succulents, because during the hotter months they will be more active, they will be awake, you will see them producing new leaves and growing a little bit more than if it is winter or if it's colder in your area. So I have here 5 different varieties of Echeverias, and the first one I showed you is the Echeveria Elegance. With my experience with this plant, it takes a while before it can root, before it can establish. So if you're buying this online and it's not rooted when you buy it, then you will need to water it a little bit more frequently than your other Echeverias. And because it is quite thin leaf, it can tolerate a little bit of watering, especially if it's not yet plump, if it's still flappy, or I would say it's flappy or wrinkled or shriveled. If it's not yet plump, then you can water it as long as you're waiting for it to dry out thoroughly. So I can say with Echeveria Elegance, it can tolerate a little bit more watering, of course, compared to our thick leaf Echeverias. The second one that I want to show you is our Echeveria imbricata. This is a common succulent here in the Philippines, but I know in some areas this is very hard to find. But this is a very resilient succulent. And I can also say that it's quite a fast grower. It grows really quickly if it's actively growing, and you will see it produce many leaves if you're watering it consistently during the growing season. The third Echeveria variety I have here is this Echeveria Peach Pride. Now you can see that I have 3 here, but this used to be one plant, and that plant got insects on it, and the main central rosette got bitten off by insects, and I didn't know what insect that was specifically, but instead of having just one rosette, the plant produced 3 heads, and I recently removed them from their main stem, and here they are. And I can really say that this plant grows very quickly, because that succulent, the main rosette that was bitten by insects, I bought that last year, but now I have 3, and they are about the same size as when I first got them. So it really grows a lot very quickly, and you can see that it even grows much more bigger than this. So if you give it consistent watering, and if it's actively growing, then it will just grow and grow. Currently, I have the main stem here just producing new pups on its main stem after I remove this. So I'm expecting to get a lot more of these succulents. So if you want a Echeveria that grows fast and that can tolerate a lot of watering, I would recommend this Peach Pride. Now, of course, because this is a fast grower, you would not want to put this in a very shaded area. You want to give it more sun so that it can stay compact, because as it grows, it tends to have a habit of growing upright, of growing tall. So you want to give it more like if you're giving it plenty of water. Our fourth Echeveria variety is the Neon Bakers. Now you can see that it's got really thin leaves, and because of those thin leaves, it can tolerate a little bit of more frequent watering. I wouldn't want to leave this dry out for too long, because the leaves will crumple and will shrink, and will just become like these toasted pieces of crackers. That's what they would look like if you leave it dry for too long. So if you're putting this in a full sun, you would have to water it a little bit more frequently. But if you do that, you will see that it just grows and grows, and it can easily produce pups for you. So if you want a clumping type of succulent of Echeveria, the Neon Bakers is a good one for you. And also, it's a very colorful type of Echeveria. The fifth Echeveria variety I have here is the Echeveria Topsy Turvy. Now also this is a fast grower compared with other Echeverias. You can see that the leaves of mine are quite plump, but it can get thinner than that if you're giving it plenty of water. Now I'm trying to stress out this plant so it's producing much thicker leaves, but you can see other forms of it. If it's shaded, it can tolerate a little bit of shade, and if you water it frequently, then the leaves will grow thinner but it will grow faster. So that's what I found with this plant. But currently, if it's a bit stressed, if you're giving it plenty of light, then it will not grow as quick. But I can say that if you're watering this frequently, you would just see this plant just grow and grow. I've even seen some other people just planting this type of succulent in like pure organic material potting mixes, and it just grows, it just thrives. And also this plant produces a lot of pups. I have some pups growing in here, under here, so I can just behead it later on and it will just produce a big clump of Echeveria Topsy-Turvy. So this is a very good fast grower Echeveria. Now for the next genus that I want to show you, I want to share with you the Sedums, and this is the only Sedum that I would recommend if you're growing in a very rainy area or if you want to grow Sedums outdoors. This is a Sedum Adolfi. I won't be bringing it close to the camera because it's too heavy, it's too big, and you can see from afar, and I'm going to be showing you some clips of close-up of this plant. It's a very resilient plant. It can tolerate a lot of water. With the right potting mix, I'm pretty sure that you can grow this sedum outdoors. Even if it's raining, it will just produce new growth. Now the plant I have here is just a little bit stressed because I've been giving it plenty of light and I'm not watering it as often than it needs. So if you want a warmer colored succulent, then this is a good plant for you, the Sedum Adolfi. It turns into a bit of orangey yellow, green, orange, yellow, some shades of red. So it's a really warm colored succulent. I would recommend that if you're also a beginner trying to grow succulents for the first time, especially here in the Philippines. It's a common plant. You can buy it very cheaply if you're living in the Philippines. The next genus that I want to show you is our crassulas. I have two here. Actually, I have three here. This is the two that I just took to the camera. So this is our crassula tetragona, and this is our crassula muscosa. And I have here my crassula ovata, or our usual jade plant. Now, here in the Philippines, jade plants are infamous for always dying because people have a lot of problems with this plant. But what I found recently with my care with this plant, it actually can handle a little bit more watering than our succulents, and it will actually thrive if you don't let it stay dry for too long. So these plants, if you let them stay dry for too long, their leaves will just wither away, and they will not look lush like this if you're giving them less water. So I would recommend that if you're growing crassulas with Echeverias, water your crassulas more frequently than your Echeverias or than your sedums. If they dry already, just give them a thorough watering and wait for them to dry out, but don't let them stay dry for too long because they will just wither away and die if you let them wet for too long. If you let them dry for too long. The next genus that I want to show you is our graptopetalums. This is a graptopetalum myrinae. This is a very small leaf graptopetalum, which is why I can recommend it if you're the type who wants to water your succulents very frequently. Now, I would not say that this will need to be watered every day, but this will take a little bit more frequent watering. You don't also want to let it stay dry for too long because those little leaves, it will just dry up very quickly if you leave it in the full sun and if you're letting it dry for too long. So I would recommend that if you have this plant and it's thoroughly dry already, then give it a thorough watering as well, and you will see that it will just continuously grow. If you don't give it consistent watering, then the leaves will be much more exposed. The stem will be much more exposed and the leaves will just start dropping. So this is a very water tolerant type of graptopetalum. Now I have another graptopetalum here. You can see that is my graptopetalum paraguayense, but I would not recommend you water it as frequently as this because the leaves on that is much thicker, much bigger, so it can tolerate a little bit more drought compared to this plant. The next genus that I want to show you is our sinisios. Now some other people, they call these curios. This is our senecio string of watermelon, and this is my curio peregrinus or string of dolphins. So you can see here that they're just like plump really plump, really good trailing succulents. What I found out about these sinisios or curios, that if you let them dry for as long as you let your echeverias dry, so they will not thrive very well. They can lose a lot of their leaves if they're always dry. So I would recommend that you water them a little bit more frequently, especially if you're using the same potting mix for this plant and for your echeverias. So once it dries out, it can dry out pretty quickly, so you have to water it right away because the plant will just suffer if it's dry for too long. But also you have to adjust your watering depending on your sunlight, depending on the sunlight on your area. If you're growing them indoors, then you might not have to water them for too frequently. If you're growing them outdoors though, you want to give them a little bit more water. And when grown outdoors, you will see that they produce, you can see that the plant I have here has a really thick stem, so that's what will happen if you grow it in the full sun, or if you grow it, if you're giving it plenty of light. So you don't want to give it much direct light. You still want to give it a little bit more protection when it's too hot. But if it gets plenty of light, you can see the colors are really bright. It's got this like violet purplish look to it, and a really thick stem and really fat leaves if it gets plenty of light. Also, I forgot about this other senecio. Now what I found out, the upright type sinisios, they are still sinisios, while the trailing type, they are already called curios. So this is our senecio cliniformis. This is a very thin leaf senecio. I wouldn't leave this dry for too long because it can, you can see here, it already has a dried leaf. So that's what happens if you leave it dry for too long. The next genus that I want to show you is this portulacaria apra. This is a non-variegated version of the portulacaria apra. Now this plant, if it's established, it can tolerate a lot of watering. It can be watered very frequently, of course, if you just wait for it to dry out first. But what I found out, if it's already dry, the leaves will wrinkle if it's not watered right away. So if it's growing, it grows a lot and it will need a lot of water if you don't want it to lose its leaves. So you just water it when it's dry, and right now it's looking very wrinkled, very shriveled. So that's what it's looking like right now. Also, you don't want to give it very much hot sun if you're growing it in a pot like this, because it will not grow much bigger roots. So it will have to be protected from extreme heat. But if you're growing this outdoors and in a bigger pot, then I can say that this plant will handle a little bit of direct sun. But yeah, I can say that this is a very fast grower type of succulent, and you wouldn't want to let it stay dry for too long. For our next genus, I have here our kalanchoes. Now, not all kalanchoes can tolerate a lot of water, but I can say that with these types, you don't want to let them dry out for too long. So once they're dry, you can just give them water. So with this laxiflora, it can tolerate a little bit of drought, but also it can tolerate a little bit of watering. So it's a very nice plant for beginners if you want to grow succulents that grow fast, and they produce clumps very readily. So that's what I can say is good about the laxiflora. So also, if you don't want a plant that will just multiply very quickly, then you can avoid this, because this will just produce new babies for you. It will grow very fast, which is why I think that it's a very cheap plant for some markets. And this plant, the kalanchoe tomentosa, or the teddy bear kalanchoe, or the panda plant kalanchoe, this is a much slower growing kalanchoe. It's not as fast as the laxiflora, but what I can say with this, once it's established, you don't want to leave it dry for too long, because the plant will just be, it will look a little bit tired. The leaves will become much thinner if it is dry for too long, and it will not look as good as this. So if you want it to stay fat and you want the leaves to be firm, you have to water this right away if it's dry already. So of course, you want to check if it's dry already. You have to check the soil thoroughly if it's dry inside. So not just the upper portion of the soil, but thoroughly up until the bottom. You have to check if it's dry before you water it. And also, what I would recommend if you're watering this plant, you water it from the bottom so that you will not get water on its leaves, because if the air circulation is bad in your area and you're leaving water at the leaves, then it can get rot because of its fuzzy leaves. Really cute, huh? The sun is really inconsistent today, guys. I think it's getting through some clouds and getting under clouds, so the light is very inconsistent today. So the final genus that I want to share with you is our ice plants. This is our Corpuscularia lemanii, and this is I think a delosperma of some type. This is a variegated pickle plant. So if you have a pickle plant or pickle succulent, then this is the variegated form. I think this is a variegated form because I bought this. It's much expensive, and it's less of a dark green but more of a lighter yellowish green type of ice plant. And what I can say with these plants, they can tolerate a little bit more of watering. Actually, a lot of people are having problems with their Corpuscularia lemanii because this tends to get very wrinkled very quickly. So you can see here, it doesn't like to be dry for too long. If it's dry already, the leaves will just get puckered very quickly, so it needs a lot of water, but also it doesn't like to stay wet for too long, so it still needs a very fast draining mix and very frequent watering. Now the problem with this plant, because some people still kill it, is that if they see the leaves getting wrinkled, they uproot this plant. So I would not recommend that. If it's getting wrinkled, it might not have a problem with the roots, so you just have to continuously give it water and don't uproot it, because it will be a harder time for the plant to establish. So don't uproot it, just give it consistent watering. Usually you would buy this as big clumps, so you might sacrifice a stem or a leaf here and there, but if you give it consistent watering and once it's established, it will not get withered as quickly compared to if it's still establishing. So it will just get puckered if it's not yet established, and you will really have to sacrifice some leaves at the bottom while it is still rooting, while it is establishing. So it's pretty natural for this plant, so don't get carried away, don't panic right away if this plant is not getting plump very quickly. So it's just a very thirsty plant, which is quite ironic because this is an ice plant. So you would think of an ice plant as a plant that can handle a lot of water, that can hold on to a lot of water, but this will dry up really fast if you don't water it right away. Also, you don't want to put this in the shade, because some people think that if their plant is dry, then they will need to be saved from the heat. But if you're already putting this in a very sunny area and you give it less sun, so it will be establishing again, and it will be a harder time for the plant. The plant will be stressed, and you could get rot if you're moving it from place to place. So if it's already in a sunny area, just leave it there and just give it consistent watering so that the plant will plump back up. And also the same I can say with this delosperma of some kind of this pickle plant. I'm not sure of the ID of this or the scientific name of this, but what I can say that since this is a new plant for me and I bought this along with my other succulents, now my other succulents that are establishing, I leave them dry. I don't water them very often because I don't want to get rot on them if they're still not rooted. But this one rooted pretty quickly, I could say, and it just produced a lot of new growth. So you can see here, those leaves are new growths. So that's what happened when I gave it water. When I was not giving it enough water, you can see that the bottom is just dried out. So it doesn't like to stay dry for too long. So you want to give it water right away, especially if it's not established, because without a proper root system, then it will not tolerate a lot of heat. It will dry up very quickly. So you will need to water it until it is established, and once it is established, then it will not need that frequent of watering. So that's about it, guys, for our succulents that needs frequent watering and that can tolerate a little bit of watering. Here are some of them, and here are some of them. Now I would just like to say that not all succulents in their genus can tolerate a lot of water. So these types that I showed you, these are the only ones, or I would say that these are some of the few of their genus that can tolerate a little bit of watering. Now thicker-leaved Echeverias, they will not need frequent watering at all. You will have to let them dry for a bit while before you water them, because thicker-leaved succulents will be more prone to rot if they get frequent watering. But still, I would recommend with this type of thin-leaf succulents that you still wait for them to dry out before you water them right away, just to avoid rot. And also, you would like to give them consistent light because they're kind of like fast growers. I think the only ones that doesn't like direct sun is our crassulas, but generally most of these other succulents, they can tolerate a lot of sun. So I think that's about it for our succulents classified, guys. If you like this video, just hit the like down below, and also if you want to see more of our compilation of succulents in the future, if you want a particular trait of succulent that you want me to make a compilation video of, you just comment it down below and I'll try my best to do it. And also, if you're still new to the channel, then I have a succulents classified video right here. I already made a compilation video before, so if you want to check that out, so you can click at the video here. But if you haven't already subscribed, you can also subscribe here. So make sure to guys hit like and subscribe down below so that you can be a part of our ever-growing community here at the Cali Plants channel. But that's about it for our video, guys. I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye!